Chief Minister, Ministers, fellow States members and colleagues from the Government of Jersey. Thank you for joining in today for our first Jersey Water webinar. We are broadcasting to you from the desalination plant, otherwise known as Le Rosier. It's not currently in operation, so we felt it was an appropriate studio location for our webinar, given the topic, which is shining a spotlight on our island's current and future water supply needs. Although it's not currently producing water today, we do caveat that this is a working site, so there may be the odd sound or even a seagull joining us today. Over the next 30 minutes, we will be giving you an overview of the work that Jersey Water has been doing and continues to do to future-proof the island's water supply. This is so that we are resilient to drought and to population change, and so that we at Jersey Water can continue to meet the highest quality standards in the world today and every day. We will keep this presentation relatively brief. At this stage, it's designed to give you an introduction to our work in this space. Our aim is to keep to our allotted time, ensuring we answer as many of your questions as we can at the end of the webinar. We're using Slido to manage the questions today, so please use our QR code on your screen and the hashtag #WaterForJersey to send in your questions. Before we go into more detail about the work we're currently doing, Helia, as our Chief Executive, please can you just give us a bit of an overview as to why it's so important that we prioritise this work?
Certainly, thanks Abby. Jersey Water's purpose statement is supplying the water for our island to thrive today and every day. And in this context, the key words are today and every day in short term and long term. In the short term, we manage water resources on a daily, weekly, monthly basis and meet the immediate needs of our customers, and we do that very well. But the long term is where the real challenge sits. And so we're talking about 10, 20, 30, 40 years into the future, real generational changes. And so this process is about planning for water resources over that time frame. And part of the process is really looking at how much water we'll need as an island, as a community, and so that depends on things like the population and how much are people using the showers and so forth, and also how much water will be available from the environment. And those things are really dependent on climate change and sort of how much rainfall is going to be happening in the future. Water resource planning is something that we do on a regular basis. It's a 5-yearly cycle, and we follow the methodology which is set out in the UK water sector as best practice, and that evolves over time. So we'll be refining the plans we've done in the past. Refining those plans, and the last plan we did was in 2021, which showed that if we don't take action, we'll have a deficit by 2045 in a drought scenario of about 8 million litres per day. And given that we, on average, use around 19 million litres per day, that's a significant deficit which requires action to address. And so this is all about planning for those measures that we need to implement over the next 10, 20, 30 years to meet that demand for water, to make sure that we, as an island, never run out.
Wow, thank you very much for that. I mean, that is stark reality. Mm-hmm. That's a significant volume of water. Mark Bowden, you are leading on this project for Jersey Water. I mean, let's be frank about it. It's a mammoth and rather technical task that we're barely going to scratch the surface of today in this webinar. So can you give us some context about the need for long-term planning, the quite unique challenges that Jersey is facing, and why we, and when I say we, I mean the island of Jersey, why we need to focus on this now?
Sure, Robbie. Yeah. It's a well-known quote from the former president of the World Bank back in 1995, who said that if the wars of the last century were fought over oil, the wars of the next century will be fought over water. And what we've seen across recent decades is several really high-profile droughts across the world that have led to some severe water restrictions to be put in place. We've seen it in parts of the US, we've seen it in Australia, and most notably perhaps in South Africa, in Cape Town, where they were actually on a countdown to day zero, and the most severe water restrictions imaginable were in place before supplies actually ran out for the city.
Actually, we've been seeing a little bit closer to home recently as well, haven't we?
Yeah, that's right. At the current time, in southern Spain, in Sicily and in North Africa, there are really severe droughts currently happening. Those areas are important areas for food production, agriculture, and also tourism has been significantly affected in some parts of southern Europe.
So that's really important for us to take note of, given that those are three industries that Jersey relies upon so heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings the message closer to home when we think about how that might impact Jersey.
So what are the unique challenges that Jersey does actually face?
Well, we face the combined threats of population change, of climate change, and the risk of pollution of water sources. And the competing demands for water really exert ever greater pressure on the water that is available to supply to our community.
What about our neighbours in Guernsey?
Well, our Achilles heel in Jersey is our lack of ability to store water. We have just 120 days when all of our reservoirs are full. We have 120 days supply. If we compare that to Guernsey, they have 365 days worth of storage. Looking further afield in parts of the UK, they have well over a year's worth of storage in many parts of the UK. So it's a particular challenge for us here in Jersey, which is quite acute. And that 120 days is a stark reality that we stare down the barrel of every year as we're operating our infrastructure and managing our water resources on the island.
And even in the face of the wettest year on record last year, it still poses a problem, doesn't it?
That's right. It was one of the wettest years, but even though we had such a high amount of rainfall last year, that doesn't mean that we don't face the risk of water restrictions later in this year. 2 or 3 months of extremely dry weather, and we will be in a situation just like we were in 2022, where we could be facing water restrictions.
There's actually a slightly less obvious comparison for another island as well that we've discussed previously.
Well, that's right. Australia, if we look at Australia, it's very different to Jersey. I think we can all accept that. It's recognised as a very dry and arid country in many parts. But they actually have the highest levels of water storage per person of any country in the world. They've really recognised and embraced that water resources challenge. If we look at the numbers, for every person in Australia, there is 3,000 cubic metres of water stored. Compared to Jersey, that's just 25 cubic metres of water stored. If we had to transport that to our homes and park it on the drive, Australians would be looking at a fleet of tankers, a fleet of water tankers that would stretch from Belroyal to St Helier. For Jersey residents, we could fit it on the back of a ferry speed truck. Wow. So it just really highlights that difference between the two islands.
It really does. The last drought for us was also actually not that long ago.
No, our last drought was in 2022, where we introduced a hosepipe ban, which is really a call on the community to do their bit to recognise that there is a shortage of water, and we've had a long dry period, and to ask our customers to use less water and help the limited supply that we have go further. It's the first time we've had it to introduce hosepipe ban, water use restrictions in around 20 years, and it's a measure that we don't like to rely on too often, but it's a really important tool for a water company to be able to call upon to make those supplies last longer into the summer months.
So there's a lot of emphasis really on making Jersey a society that's a bit more water conscious as consumers, all of us really. So how are we doing today?
Well, in terms of our water efficiency, we're quite water efficient as an island. Already we introduced water metering as a measure from our plan around 2009. That took a few years to roll out, but that's been really successful in managing the overall demand for water. On average, the average person uses around 117 litres of water per person per day. If we compare that to parts of the UK, the average is closer to 145 litres of water per person per day. So The use of water metering and our excellent leakage record is really what we call the low-hanging fruit. It's measures that we've already taken, we've already adopted here in Jersey, and we can't make those gains again. They've already been won. So we've got to look for more substantial or more innovative ways to increase our future supply to meet that demand for water in the future.
I think one of those pesky seagulls is trying to get into the building. What about past droughts? Are we seeing any patterns in Jersey?
Yeah, so Jersey has a really long history of rainfall records. We've got about 140 years worth of rainfall records, and we've seen 4 really significant droughts across that record. The first in 1921, which is actually the driest year on record, the driest single year on record. In 1949, there was a significant drought. And in 1976, which was widely recognised as the worst drought to hit the UK, Jersey wasn't as badly affected, but it was still a really significant drought. And that really gave great momentum to the case for construction of Queens Valley Reservoir, which is our biggest reservoir now. And it's certainly an asset. We are absolutely sure that it's an asset that we could not do without in the present day. It is really that important to our overall supply. It's a decision that took 20 years to make, to get the permission to build Queens Valley, but it's so important to us today.
Quite a unique little anecdote about Queens Valley as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so it's a little known fact that when it was commissioned in 1992, the cutting of the ribbon, so to speak, was there wasn't actually any natural stream flow to fill the reservoir, so water had to be pumped across the island from one of the other very limited sources in order to make that moment appear really significant for the opening of the new reservoir. Yeah. The most severe drought to affect Jersey was between 1989 and 1992. It was actually a 3-year event that prolonged dry weather and the failure of the reservoirs to recharge over the winter periods led to extreme shortages in the summer of 1992. Water supplies really went to the wire, and it was only saved by a very wet autumn that followed in 1992.
So when did we last focus on our planning, and what work have we done since?
Well, the last plan was published in 2021. It followed a similar methodology to this plan, and it recognised that we faced a growing shortage of water as a result of climate change and forecast population growth. The work that we've been doing since that time, we've further improved our leakage record, which is the best leakage record in the British Isles by a comfortable margin. We've improved on that. We've also begun a trial of water metering, smart meters installed in a limited number of homes across Jersey, and that's really to see whether that's going to be a viable option for us in the future to roll out wider, to help customers get more information and for them to understand their water usage and hopefully to make them more efficient.
What about desalination plant? We're here after all.
Well, yeah, so the most significant aspect of the last plan was to expand the desalination plant by adding an extra 5 million litres per day of capacity to it. We've done all the investigation work on that, and we've substantially completed the design, so we understand the complexity of that project and we understand the cost of that project. We estimate that it'll cost about £25 million at today's prices to expand the desalination plant. And that's a really significant sum. We're very conscious that the plan needs to be affordable. It needs to be affordable for Jersey Water, but also for our customers who pay the bills, and the customers who pay the bills pay for the infrastructure and the investment that we need to make in it. So it's not a decision that we take lightly. This plan will look at the timing of that investment and when is the optimal time to do it. It's also very operationally challenging as well to maintain the asset in a state of readiness to respond to drought, whilst also planning to expand it.
Thanks, Mark. That certainly gives a sense of how vulnerable our island's water supply actually is and why it's so critical that we do this work now. So far today, we focused on the quantity of our water that our island will need to meet the future water supply demand, but quantity is only one factor. Jeanette, as our water quality manager, I'm going to bring you in here to cover this.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. During our water resource planning process, it's really key to look at the quantity of water, but also making sure we've got the right quality of water as well. It's equally important and absolutely essential to ensure that's completed. At the moment, we have restricted the use of some of our western sources because of the historic contamination up at the airport, which has resulted in the presence of PFAS in some of our streams and boreholes. This is a real problem. It reduces our water supply balance and resilience, and we're looking to find a solution to this, which is essential, or we'd have to have a new resource, a new water resource. As well as that, our small shallow reservoirs are very susceptible to pollution, whether it's single occasions, single incidents, or if it's seasonal. So for example, if we have a pollution or contamination incident in Val de la Mar Reservoir, which restricts its use, we lose that 120 days is reduced to just 80 days storage on the island. So it can have a significant impact.
We actually see that on an annual basis as well.
And we do, for a variety of reasons. We do restrict the use on different reservoirs, as well as, in addition, the seasonal issues that we have from high nitrates, high nutrients in our streams and our catchments can result in algal blooms. Algal blooms are really hard to treat, and that further limits our use of some of our reservoirs. And the collaborative work with the Action for Cleaner Water group and the wider industry has really helped to manage that risk, and it's really key going forward to ensure we have the right quantity of water at the right quality.
Absolutely, and we do have a great track record actually for the last 10 years, haven't we, thanks to that collaborative working with farmers and...
Absolutely, our treated water has been fully compliant, definitely.
Thanks, Jeanette. Back to you, Mark. What are the next steps for Jersey Water?
Well, we've started our 2025 Water Resources Management Plan. We're a good way through the stages of analysis, and we're working with our partners and intend to complete and publish the plan in early 2025. Our next plan will feed into the work to develop a water strategy for Jersey, which was a commitment under the last island plan. And it also formed part of the evidence base for the island plan, which is due to be completed in 2026. So yeah, it's a really important piece of work that will feed into and inform both of those wider projects.
So how do we do this? What's our methodology?
Well, our planning follows the latest guidance, and that has changed over the past few years. Previously, the guidance was to prepare for a water supply resilience to the worst historic drought on record, which for us was that 1992 event. The guidance now is for water companies to assess their resilience to a 1 in 500 year drought event. So that's a much higher benchmark of drought resilience. So we'll be undertaking that assessment, and the results we will have in the months to come.
And for comparison, just to look back at that 1992 event, as severe as it was assessed as a 1 in 120 year drought.
Yeah, so the 1 in 500 will be a much sort of challenging level of drought resilience. So we recognise that, but it's important that we follow the latest guidance, and we understand that one of those droughts that has never been experienced in the living memory.
So what will our next plan cover?
Our next plan will cover the future, covering the next 25 to 40 years, and that really takes account of the very long lead time to design and construct and gain permissions to develop large water supply infrastructure.
So really we need to take action now, because it's going to take time to put things in place.
Yes, we do. Our plan will be an adaptive plan. We will look across a range of stakeholders, including the Jersey government, including our customers, and including the environment. And we have to compare the various schemes that are available to us across a range of metrics to really come up with a best value plan, an adaptive plan that is flexible enough to deal with a range of plausible futures.
So once we've finalised our plan, what happens next?
Well, the decisions that we take over the next decade will really set the course of history for the future of Jersey's water resources. Our predecessors in previous plans took bold decisions to construct reservoirs, to innovate through the use of desalination, and to roll out water metering in every household in Jersey. And these are big decisions that need to be taken in order to address our future supply challenges. Collectively, we need to understand the challenge, we need to accept the challenge and accept that it is a real challenge that faces us today and in the future. And it's a threat to our stability and our future prosperity. Our options here in Jersey are limited, and there are difficult decisions that lie ahead. But working together, innovating and collaborating to help provide Jersey with new water resources will ensure that we can continue to supply the water for the island to thrive today and every day.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you. Before we move on to our Q&A session, which I will say to the audience now, remember we are using Slido. Please use the QR code that's on the screen now and the hashtag #WaterForJersey to send us in your questions. Before we go to the Q&A, Helier, I'll just pass back to you with any final thoughts.
Thanks, Abby. I think Mark and Jeanette have really eloquently set the case for the need for long-term water resource planning and also the need to maintain quality over that time as well, and also set out what Jersey Water's doing to deliver that plan. And we look forward to completing the work that we've got to do that over the course of the remainder of the year, and then engaging with the community to actually deliver the plan, because it's all about making the difference. I think the key thing for me is around the need for a partnership approach with government and other stakeholders in the ability to deliver large infrastructure. Jersey Water will always focus on leakage reduction and water efficiency, and all the things we can do on our own we'll do. But when it comes to large-scale infrastructure, we will need to work with government and feed into some key and critical parts of the government decision-making process, like the Island Plan. And so I really look forward to working with my colleagues in the audience and those who aren't here today in delivering that plan and making it a reality over the course of the next year or so.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Right, now it's time to move on to our question and answer session. We've already had a number of questions sent in over Slido. A reminder that the hashtag is #WaterForJersey if you do want to send in any questions. We will try to get through as many questions as we can in the time we have left today. If we don't manage to answer all of the questions, we will provide answers by email after the webinar, along with a recording of today's session. Right, let's make a start. So, I think I might throw this one to you, Mark. What is the worst case scenario and how concerned should we be?
I think the worst case scenario is that we have a very prolonged drought and a failure to refill our reservoirs over a winter, if we have a dry winter. And very much we could compare that to the situation in Cape Town, where extreme water shortages led to extreme measures. So we would have to call upon the community to help reduce water usage to extreme levels to eke out our supplies, and we'd be looking for contingencies all the time to move in additional resources either from other jurisdictions or to really go to severe measures like rota cuts and water collection points. But that really is the worst case scenario, and our planning that we're going to do is really to prevent us having to face that kind of future.
Yeah, absolutely. Helier, I might throw this one to you. How will Jersey Water realistically meet the water supply demand challenges that are being predicted?
Well, there's a number of strategies. So the first one is to reduce the amount of water that's consumed in the island, and so that's by demand management is what we call it. And so, as Mark said already, we've addressed a lot of that through metering, through leakage management, water efficiency messaging, but I think there's more we could do. 117 litres per person per day is how much we consume as an island individually at the moment. There's a target in a sort of widespread target nationally of 100 litres per person per day. So that gives a direction of travel we could work towards through education, through more water efficiency measures, smart metering, all of those tools to reduce demand. But reducing demand itself won't be enough. We will need additional water resources. So we then need to look at augmenting how much water we've got at our disposal. And we're ready to go with a desalination plant expansion if that is the right decision from the water resources plan. But over the longer term, we're going to need more than that. And then you're starting into effluent reuse, so recycling water from Belazan, and potentially another reservoir, or further desalination. So we will be needing to look at all of those options in the round to determine which are the best ones for the island long term.
So I think that probably moves quite nicely onto you, Jeanette, talking about very different ways of augmenting our water supply, desalination, the potential for effluent recycling. What about water quality? I'm sure people would be concerned about that.
Well, the technology is out there, it really is, and it's out there and in use around the world already. Our desalination plant produces really high quality water. It actually takes out too many of the minerals. So what we're looking to do in the next upgrade is to add those minerals back in, which gives us more flexibility on the sources we use. At the moment, we achieve that by blending the water in the Val-de-Mar reservoir.
I'm going to stay with you for this one, Jeanette, because I think it probably still sits with you. Catchment management, that was in our last plan. Will it feature again?
Catchment management is something we do. It's a collaborative approach across all parts of our stakeholders. It's really important to ensure we're getting the right quality into the reservoirs. And it won't necessarily help us with the quantity of water, but it really supports getting the right quality of water all the time.
Thank you, Jeanette. Mark, for you, we actually might be seeing population decrease. We're seeing wetter weather. Last year was the wettest on record. We've already touched on that. I mean, are we being overly cautious, perhaps overly concerned about this?
Well, I think Jersey Water won't take risks with our long-term planning for water supply. We are facing a climate change scenario, but we use the best modelling available and the best forecasting available to predict what those effects might be. So there is uncertainty in that regard. During our last plan, we forecasted the population would grow at a greater rate than it has done in recent years. There's various reasons for that, but the population is still forecast to grow in the future. And Jersey Water really need to provide for a population, whatever the population number that is, and that takes a great degree of planning and to implement that.
Helia, our neighbours in Guernsey, why is it they've got so much more water than us?
They've been very fortunate. In Guernsey there are a large number of quarries, and those have been turned over to reservoirs over the years. So they've built up a large storage capacity over many years. They're actually considering the reuse of a quarry at the moment, whether it be used for inert waste or water resources. And so that's a debate which is active and live in Guernsey at the moment. Even though they've got a year's worth of supply, they're still considering adding further water resources to their sort of asset base. So that really, again, shows that we are behind the curve in terms of the capacity we've got in Jersey and the need to augment it in the future.
Some decent, good bangs happening on the site, so apologies for that. So, Mark, on that point, I think, there was talking about quarries, but we've talked about underground storage capacity. Is that likely to feature in our planning?
I think our most obvious solution is either to, beyond the desalination expansion, our most obvious solution is either to extend an existing reservoir, and the most likely candidate for that would be Val-de-Mar reservoir.
Vast amount of work to do that. I mean, how do you even start?
It's great expense and a very complex engineering to either construct an extension to the existing dam or to build a new dam downstream. But it's a complex project and it come at great cost. And
we've already said, Queen's Valley took 20 years in the making to actually start planning and get it built. I mean, where would we even be looking at a new site?
Well, historically different parts of the island have been considered for new reservoirs. So there's upstream of the existing Grand Vaux reservoir has been looked at. in the distant past. During the planning for Queens Valley, new reservoir at Lemuria was considered, but Queens Valley was seen as the best option at the time and the cheapest solution to deliver the biggest amount of storage.
Jeanette, one for you. How much will it cost to fix the island's PFAS issue?
Well, the exact sum isn't known at the moment, and there's a lot of work going on both with the government and their consultants and with ourselves looking at the cost of treatment so that we can build it into this planning to find a solution.
Mark, I think we'll make this the last question. Obviously, a very, very relevant topic. What about sustainability and the environment? You know, it's a key stakeholder of ours. How are we going to make sure that the solutions that we have factor all of that in for the island?
Well, as part of our planning, it's part of the process to look at a range of options. We start with a wide range of options and we hone that down into a feasible shortlist. And then we do detailed analysis across a range of measures, and that includes the engineering complexity, it includes the cost of the scheme, the acceptability to our customers, and the environmental impact of those schemes, both on habitats and on embodied carbon and operational carbon usage as well. So we'll really look at those list of options and we'll come up with the best options across a range of measures that both fulfil the water resources requirement, but also the costs are balanced across those range of measures, including the environment. So it's a really important consideration for us.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks to Helia and also to Jeanette for fielding all the questions today. I think we definitely had some good ones there. That is all we have time for today. Of course, if you have further questions or would like more information, please do reach out to us. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar by email. For now, though, thank you for taking the time to tune in. From all of us here at the desalination plant, goodbye.